boyfriend gave me the trade paperback of Rebirth. And that explicitly got me back into comics.
That's awesome.
I did not.
Is that right? Oh,
yeah,
cool.
Like it was that trade paperback, which I might still have, that he was just like, just read this.
Nice.
I didn't understand who the Spectre was. I had no idea who Black Hand was.
Why Hal Jordan was the Spectre at the time?
I did not know.
Right.
I did not know the rules. I did not know Green Arrow was dead.
You're talking about Blackest Night.
No, I'm talking about
Rebirth.
Oh, Rebirth.
Yeah.
That got me back in general. And then this was the series that I just kind of followed. It was the stupid crumb trail through the forest of like, well, now I'm reading comics full time again.
Yeah. Young Junk!
What's up to our sidekicks and henchfolk out there in the mother-loving geek nation? In brightest day, in blackest night, we're here to pod tonight. Welcome to the second episode of our Farewell Brian edition of the Cult Pop Podcast, episode 82. A show where we will talk about movies and TV and comics and Brian's favorite things and all the other nerdy things that scratch Brian's itches. We're coming to you live from
Not
Young
just the nerdy
Junk.
ones.
What's it?
All of his itches.
All of them.
Oh, not just the nerdy itches.
Which,
yeah.
as discussed last week, are all over.
Even Len is here to apply self.
Yeah. We
Oh,
needed
whatever
another
is
person.
itching.
And
Yeah.
Len was very kind. And
He was like,
offered to come back.
me.
Yeah.
He called left ball.
Yeah.
We're
I
coming
like
to you
balls.
live from Young Chunk HQ, a bomb-ass podcast production space in Philadelphia, PA. Say hi, Dylan.
Hi, Dylan.
I'm your Indigo Lantern host.
Ooh,
Knock, knock.
it's a good one.
Of Johnny Destructo's Hero Complex, located at 4327 Main Street, Philadelphia, PA, a rad-ass comic shop that caters to rad-ass folks like yourself. So come down and have a hoedown, buy some comics. With me tonight to talk is Alice.
Hi.
And Noel.
Hi.
Special guest Len.
He didn't do it very well.
What's up?
I should have practiced. I should have tried.
And that's not your usual.
Hey, what's up? Holla at your boy. This is Len, aka the Bat Tribble.
That's the one. And
we
man
teased
of,
your appearance last week.
man of the hour, Brian.
Thank you, JD. It has been my hour to be on this show. And
I see what you did.
I am
really-
itchy and
Yeah.
a man.
Yeah.
And it is an hour.
But it really has been. I was in the shop. We've been friends for years.
Years.
And I've been going to your shop for as long as it's been open.
Mhm.
And one time I wandered in and I didn't know where I was. And, I was, despite having been there every week.
Yeah.
It's high on ayahuasca.
And
Just
you guys
walking around the
town. As I often do.
Yes, he
and
does.
so, yeah. And more
Natural
than
walkabout.
not, you guys were recording an episode of the podcast. And I know Noel was there. And we had hung out once years earlier, and I was always like, I want to hang out more with that Noel guy, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't even know your last name.
But
Was
you
yours
just
that
Nolan.
Noel guy? I did.
You were
and
mistaken.
I knowed him.
Yeah.
And
I'm a
Nolled
verb.
him.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to be a verb.
Mm.
And I don't remember if you were there that week. You certainly were there quickly after, but possibly that week. You were talking about Sandman, and you said, but it might have been that one of you guys was out, and that's why JD said, Brian, you like Sandman a lot. Would you like to talk about this? And I love being in front of a microphone, and I love talking to you, and I came to love talking to you guys, and then that's how it got started. It was about 5 years ago. And it really has been my great pleasure, joy, and honor to be part of this
Aw.
podcast. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Got it.
And
Thanks for
after
having me.
tonight, we can never speak of you again.
No,
Yeah.
or to me,
Yeah.
as I demanded.
So as mentioned last week and also just now, Brian will be moving on from the weekly podcast of the Cult Pop for greener pastures. So in honor of him, the main topic tonight and last week's are, by his request, last week we dove into two of B's favorite Star Trek episodes. So if you haven't seen it yet, go back and check it out. Len,
Yes,
you haven't seen it, so go back and check it out.
I will.
Yeah.
Tonight, however, we will discuss something far more sinister.
Oh.
2009's DC Comics event, Blackest Night.
Why did you pick this?
Well, when we were selecting what to do, I had a couple of different suggestions. One of them being some Star Trek stuff and Armageddon 2001, which is something that, not the whole
man.
thing I wouldn't have said. And it now seems like a good time to mention that, much to my delight, JD surprised me with this action figure of Wave Rider before the shows, which is the main, the spearhead character, the main character of the Armageddon 2001 stuff. He can time travel at will, and he looks cool.
He does look
and
cool.
I don't need more than that. And, but he's also got a cool time travel story as his basis, right?
Others' floor is your ceiling. Like,
Yeah.
you look cool?
Yeah.
We're in.
I'm
Just-
in. And the powers are cool.
Yeah.
But he also had probably one of my first introductions to like not quite a time loop, but sort of a time loop kind of thing in his story. There's a lot of time travel stuff, and you get glimpses of the future, and I loved all of it as a young man in 1991. So I was 10 when this came out, and the Wave Rider has been among my top 2. The other one being Golden DC 1 Million Superman. From, if you're listening, whoever makes DC Comics action figures, I would love that, and other people might too.
It's all gold and cool.
Didn't they?
No,
I've never seen one.
There's a variant cover coming out that has Golden Superman on it.
That's cool.
And they look like the old Super Friends action figures.
Oh, yeah.
They did make a gold, like way before DC 1 Million.
That's the one
They
then,
made
sorry.
a gold one with a regular
Okay,
emblem.
okay,
yeah.
that's what it was.
But so the other one has been Wave Rider, and Shady was worried I didn't have, or that I had one. And not only didn't I have one, I didn't know that they made this.
Yep.
And my look of delighted awe.
I was immediately upset he didn't do this on camera.
Yeah, you missed out a
Immediately
good
upset.
Brian
Oh,
face.
voice.
Yeah.
Oh, well. But
JD's blowing his load.
yeah.
I do that a
All
lot.
over my look of delighted awe. and I loved it. JD, this was an amazing gift. Thank you so much. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I've wanted this for a long time and didn't even know that it was.
You've done
you
us
know.
the favor of not asking us to read Armageddon 2001.
I did do that. I
kinda
did
wanna
do you
read
that
it
favor.
now, though.
It's wonderful.
Talking about
It's
it is
really good.
wonderful, yeah.
We can.
I can't believe there's
Yeah.
not an omnibus of it.
Not good.
It
know,
sucks.
I can. Hater.
You get little glimpses.
Go back to Twitter.
I mean, there is absolutely a market for it. There's a market for literally everything.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
like 8 Clone Saga omnibuses. There's
I have them.
like
Yeah. It's all
I bought them.
give it a matter of time. Armageddon 2001 will
That'll
be
be cool.
Yeah,
collected.
I hope so.
Yeah.
They're all individual stories about just this character in their own comic, like
many
what could
issues
happen
was
to
it?
them 10 years from, or on the way to 10 years from now. So there's not much connection between them, but they are very cool in my memory, and
Yeah.
maybe now.
So you picked Blackest Night.
I love it. So I picked Blackest Night because, as we certainly have discussed many times, it is just such a great crossover story, event
No, I'm
comic.
good. I think.
One of our favorites. I think it topped our list of our round robin or whatever style it was, where we were putting event comics head to head. Armageddon 2001 was on that list.
Yes.
It didn't win, but Blackest Night did. And it's got such a great story, such a great build up to it before this. Geoff Johns weaves a very cool tale 99% of the time, if not 100. It's got cool moments from all of the big DC, Superman, Flash, and Green Lantern. But the Flash Green Lantern friendship is so amazing. I've
That's my
always
favorite
loved
part. Yeah.
it. And it's also, they even found a way to work Batman in, who was
Dead at the time.
but he wasn't actually
dead.
dead, so they couldn't have him in this Return of the Dead Heroes,
Yeah.
right? We knew he was trapped in the past, but they found a way to do that. And it's such a great just example of a big DC Universe story that I thought it would be great to talk about.
Nice.
Yeah. First of all, I looked it up. Armageddon 2001 is only 15 issues. So
That's
will,
it.
it will
feels
never
much
be.
bigger.
It was like 2 4-issue minis and
Give me
some
an epic collection,
and
bro.
some
The annuals.
annuals.
Yeah,
There's
Yeah.
only 15 annuals?
So there's
That's
only
wild.
15. No,
Oh, like
15 issues. There were a couple of annuals
Oh.
and a 1 through 4
There were
and
like
another
4
and a sequel
Superman
1 through
ones.
4.
Yeah.
It says 15 issues. I'm so
Wild.
sorry.
That's okay.
all right there.
I don't blame
Right?
you for what the
I'm looking at
publishers did at that time.
But also,
Like, it
You
says
could, but
15.
you
I'm
won't.
look, I see
Yes.
the 1 and the
Yeah.
5. It's,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for not doubting my reading comprehension like
Yeah,
these
yeah.
guys are.
I mean, I have my glasses
It was
on
more
today,
your
but
numbers comprehension.
Um,
but whatever, it's fine.
I read the sentence before and I read the number.
True, you can read.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Damn it.
So
Nothing can stop him.
Nothing can stop him. It was
He
the
can
final piece of his
read.
puzzle. It's what's stopping me from taking over the world is my reading comprehension.
yeah.
Now it's over. You're all fucked. This
Noted writer, Noel Bartocci.
Yeah.
He doesn't read. He's
No.
the
He just
writer.
writes.
Just does it.
That's what
Like
ChatGPT's
Beethoven.
for. It's what AI's for. It's fine. This tome started in 2007.
Wow. Like with the early hints from Green Lantern and
actually,
stuff, you mean?
before
or-
that, I think
Okay.
2005. So like Rebirth was 2005. That was the
Okay.
resurgence or just like the rebirth
Yeah.
of Hal Jordan
Yeah.
of Green Lantern,
Yeah, yeah.
starting this whole thing and like planting seeds in 2005. And then in 2007, Sinestro Corps War, genuine, like
Also an amazing event.
blatantly teased this. This was the first time in comics I'd ever seen an event ends and then there's a 1-page splash of future events. And there was a tease of this 2 years before it started.
He ended up doing that multiple times.
couple times, yeah.
To great effect, I think.
Yeah.
Like, that was always fun when you'd see, like, at the end of his first JSA issue.
Yes.
You're like, here's what's coming up. You got Kingdom Come Superman.
yeah,
is in the works.
this year,
Yeah.
year in JSA.
Yeah, that was cool.
This was the first, after the end of Sinestro Corps War, this was the first time anybody, modern comics, did that. And then had the patience for 2.5 years to like slowly set it up.
Yeah.
And it all culminated in this.
They were very cool stories, right? It wasn't
all
like you're like, oh, when's this thing that they're talking about going to happen?
Yeah.
It was, the whole ride was cool.
Yep.
So the payoff was
Yeah.
great.
Story aside, just the publishing patience and initiative in a pre social media era, they had the patience to really like play it out.
This was also a great era of DC
Oh,
Comics.
Noel and I were
It's
just
an
talking about that
amazing
the
era.
other day.
Basically,
Yeah.
Infinite Crisis
This whole
through to
time
this was
was-
just fantastic.
Like all the pieces that I like were in places that I like them to be.
Yep.
You know, the stories were really cool. You had this. Geoff Johns was also on Teen Titans at this time, which was an
right.
amazing run.
Yeah.
I forget what else specifically. I think Superman was very cool at the time, and Flash was great.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it was an awesome time. Even over at Marvel, I think with a lot of Brian Michael Bendis stuff that I was really enjoying. It was like,
Yeah, this might be
Yeah,
around New
felt like-
Avengers.
It was, yeah.
great time
Early-
for comics.
2005 actually also had Lucifer coming out, Battlestar Galactica, and Arrested Development. It
Oh.
was entertainment-wise.
Yeah.
This was a good era.
This was your year.
Yeah,
It was
you were
very
all
good.
about it.
It was a
Well,
good
Star
10
Trek
years.
was
This
out
is
in
Brian's year.
2005.
yeah.
So Brian, we normally do a segment which I lovingly call "What You Been Up to This Week, Huh?"
That's true. We do
Wherein
usually do that.
I ask my friends what they've been up to this week, huh?
Yeah.
But in
Mhm.
lieu of that, you,
Mhm.
like 2 years ago,
Yeah.
was like you have this Flash theory that you wanted to share
Yeah.
with us, and you never got around to doing it. So now's your
There
time.
it
Tell
is.
tell
What is
us
it?
your Flash theory.
Thank you for giving me this time. So I noticed in most heroic stories, there is some tragedy that begins the story, right? Batman loses his parents. Superman loses his planet. You know, there is generally something that happened. Alan Scott, there was a train wreck and death happened, right? So the scale is not always large or too that personal to the hero, but even beyond comics, right? Most heroic characters, no particular examples spring to mind. It would have been great if I'd thought to come up with some, but
Luke with Aunt Beru and what's his
yeah,
name?
true,
Right?
right? There is something that causes him to have to leave, right? There's usually something like that, some horrible thing.
Exciting incident.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, the call to action often involves tragedy. Harry Potter's parents had died, right? That's why he's in the position that he's in.
Well established.
Moses
It's
was found
Very
in
recurring
the
theme in
reeds,
those
right?
books. Yeah.
Michael having to stay behind because his father got arrested and he had to take care of his family
What
in Arrested
movie is this?
Development.
Yes. He was the one son who could keep them all together.
Yeah.
The
Right?
inciting
It's
incident is the arrest on the
Arrested
boat. Yeah,
Development.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But this wasn't Arrested Development.
No.
And The Flash, and I realize this also applies to Jay Garrick, but Barry Allen really is the biggest Flash in most people's minds. But it's interesting. I realized just this afternoon that almost all Flashes do not have tragedy in their origin, right? Wally West, when we'll get to Wally West in a minute, right? But when he gets his powers, it's mostly just fun, right? And Barry Allen, he gets his abilities and he loved reading Flash comics.
Yeah.
So he decides to become a superhero. It's like,
Name the Flash.
this would be
It's
awesome.
insane.
At that time, the Flash comics were later explained as like that was actually happening in another reality, but Barry Allen's universe, Jay Garrick's adventures were in comic form, right? He loved Jay Garrick and he's like, I'm going to become the Flash. And that was it,
Yeah.
right? I
That
have
blew me
superpowers.
away when I
I'm
was
going
a
to do
kid.
this.
I was like, wait, what?
Yeah,
That's
he's
so
just
fun.
like, this would be a fun thing to do. It's something that they've never really touched on that Barry Allen is a fanboy. They don't lean into that as much as I think would be cool, right? It's a very cool thing for his character. But so then he's just the Flash for a long time, and then he dies in Crisis on Infinite Earths. And I think it's interesting.
I knew that.
Yeah. He comes back too.
I'm a listener of this podcast. I've heard you guys talk about this a lot. I was a genuine fan of this podcast before I was on
also like a very large plot point in the story.
Right. Yes, it is.
Out,
so you picked it up.
I did.
Oh,
You can read.
I too have reading comprehension.
2 out of 5. Confirmed.
For reading comprehension,
so far.
everybody. That's right.
I did it.
Hear it up. Reading is fundamental. So then he dies. And I think it's interesting that he is one of the only characters to stay dead long enough that, other than characters whose death is part of the origin story, like the Waynes, Barry Allen became the kind of quintessential character that will not come back, right? There may be a number of reasons for this, but I think it's interesting that a character who did not start with tragedy, it turned out that it's like narratively, he stayed dead because he was a brighter character in the beginning, right? And then so Wally West was not, there was nothing tragic about his origin story.
May I real quick?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this. I know you guys do, but like Wally West became Kid Flash because he was the nephew of Barry Allen.
Yes.
No, the Barry Allen's wife, Iris.
Yeah. They weren't yet married.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But they were close eventually.
Yeah. So
Nephew and name.
And so Barry Allen, the original Flash, well, not the original, that Flash, is like, I'm gonna show you how I got my origin.
Right.
I'll put all these chemicals here.
Is that there's all these chemicals exactly like this, and then lightning came through and struck me, and that's how I became the Flash. And then the exact same thing happens to Wally West, and he becomes the Kid Flash.
And he wears the same suit for a long time too, or a little while.
Yeah.
Now that was later retconned as being Barry like reaching out to the lightning and calling it down, and even so when Barry dies, he runs so fast that he kind of disintegrates and he travels back through time. And there was a later story that in the annual that introduced John Fox as well, the Flash of the 853rd century. There was a story where Barry had been turned into energy during this. And while he was upset for some reason, because he's not human. It's like, who cares? He's a sentient being. He's made out of energy now. It's cool. He can move at super speed.
Wally wasn't as woke as he needed to be.
He'll get there. He did later. So then at the end of his life, he is given the choice. Do you want to go back and be the lightning that struck those chemicals and create this hero? You will die young, but you will do a lot of good, and you will be the Flash, right? And he makes that choice. He closes the circuit, the electrical circuit. And Len, you have remembered this story fondly. Excellent. So I think that's interesting, that it's like, metaphorically, thematically, he needed that tragedy for people to continue with him. And JD, you, it's well known. You say the best thing that Barry Allen ever did was die. Right?
Yeah.
And it gives Wally, now he has a tragedy in when he becomes the Flash, and it was a big motivation for him. And he became a great Flash, and everybody loved him. And then Barry Allen came back to life, and it's like he had to have tragedy written in to his story. His parents dying were never a part of his story before Geoff Johns added the time travel based. He eventually becomes arch enemies, nemesis with the Reverse Flash, Eobard Thawne from the future, who really does not care for him at all. And he wears a reverse suit, which
I've never been able
cool.
to discern exactly what he doesn't like about the Flash and why he hates this guy so much.
Flash.
Yeah.
And then the Flash stopped him from showed him up, and he was very jealous. And
JD, we live in a society.
Yeah.
Oh, right. I forgot.
Where those that are hyper fixated on something that they love
sometimes it
often turns into something else and or ownership, perceived ownership of that.
You could have just stopped that. We live in a society.
We live in a society.
It could be better.
It's not.
You, Jared Leto.
It's not hard to believe that like
Joker.
Infatuation becomes.
Indeed. This kind of so he goes back. This tragedy was added in that he goes back because of his hatred for Barry Allen. Kills Barry Allen's parents.
Just mom.
Oh, just his mom. I'm sorry, right. And frames his dad for the murder. is also bad.
I don't know if he frames him
It's
so
not
much
great.
as there's literally no one else in the room.
Right.
And
Well,
all
okay,
the
fair.
evidence.
He wasn't
That's
in
fair.
a, a big hurry to unframe
was a-
him.
99% of
chair-
the time, the husband did it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say
it was a
Yeah.
cherry on top of the murder Sunday.
Right,
Of
right,
like,
right.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
He knew
That
the
one
odds
too.
were in his favor.
Yeah. And then for some reason, Barry can't go back and change it, even though that was changed from the original thing. But whatever, he can't do it. And it causes a big problem when he tries to. But so that's my theory. It's interesting. Just beyond comics, hero stories so often have, theory maybe is an observation, I guess, that hero stories so often have tragedy in the beginning. And Barry Allen didn't, but it's like the story put it in anyway.
Yeah.
And then when Barry came back, they finally brought him back. He had tragedy added into his origin.
I think that's more of a context of the era in which the story is told, not necessarily the story. I think that's a modern
just
trope.
like the way that just sort of a meta-textual thing. Like,
Yeah,
isn't it
It's sort of Grant
interesting that
Morrisonian, and
Yeah.
like the story itself needed to have a tragedy to create the superhero. So it after a
Yeah.
long
like
road
people
created one for
eventually
him.
felt like at first the tragedy was that he was the one that stayed dead. People felt the need to add this in, right? Jay Garrick is fine. However, I just realized today that although he was out of the picture for a long time, but he also just gets superpowers and he's like, I could do some cool stuff with this.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah, and his wasn't even chemicals. Wasn't his like hard? It's
hard water fumes.
Oh my God.
Originally hard water.
Yeah.
They eventually retconned it to heavy water.
Yeah.
Which similarly does not often give people super speed.
He
but-
falls asleep, and there's
Yeah.
hard water fumes.
like you have in your shower sometimes.
Yeah,
yeah. But his hair didn't feel clean after he had super speed.
Brian,
Weakness.
Yeah.
Brian, what is your overall thesis about this, though? Do you think that it is just a cool novelty to have someone choose heroism without tragedy, or it is a product of an era of storytelling that requires tragedy? What are your thoughts?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we certainly have been looking more towards what if that great thing didn't turn out to be so great recently.
Yeah.
This predates that. I think that element in storytelling wasn't quite around. Obviously, screwing with the heroes goes back to the earliest stories, right? Beyond the earliest comic stories, but definitely there. That's the story. So I don't know that it's an example of that. But yes, certainly, even in the era that this story was being told, things were a lot more, they leaned a lot further towards the dark than they did in the 60s.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Did
Right?
we have a modern hero that doesn't have inherent tragedy in their origin?
A modern, like, what do you mean by
someone
modern?
created in
What
a
era-
modern time?
Within the
Within
last-
what era?
30 years.
So the 21st century.
Basically.
Okay.
They didn't have a. Mm.
Well, I mean,
Well-
I would consider him being forgotten and ripped out of the time stream and then
But
coming
that
back
was-
with
that was
absolutely
before.
no one.
that was after he became Spider-Boy.
But the
But when
reader's origin
when was
for
he
him
created?
is
Like,
is based
He
in
was
tragedy.
created last year.
so our introduction to him
Yeah.
had that.
Our
But-
introduction
but
to
it's
him
an interesting wrinkle that his
is
actual
tragedy.
origin
he-
doesn't.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, do we know enough about him that he doesn't have because he has no parents or anything?
Yeah,
You're like-
he's just an orphan.
But then again, kind of like the
Yeah.
Barry Allen thing, like he didn't have tragedy in his origin, and then he got some.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I was thinking about Invincible, but there's
Not at
not
first.
there's not tragedy.
That's true. He has
him-
a tragedy after he's invincible.
Yeah.
But everything he does and how he frames himself is based off of that betrayal. Even though it happens 10 issues later. You
Yeah,
know
but
what I
he's
mean?
a hero. He
Oh,
is
yeah.
invincible.
But
first.
he's also
He
a
did
bit-
not. He
he's
did
also a
not
bit-
need that to propel him into hero.
Yeah, that wasn't like
that's
the
interesting.
thing about. I think about the era where you're talking about when they kind of like do this retcon with
Yeah.
the Flash. If I remember correctly, that was around the time where the narrative for the creation of superheroes was that there was like this inciting incident for a lot of them. Because you said it when you said that, I was like, boom, that's right. And they always talked about Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man, and things like
Yeah, he wouldn't have become a hero if not for the tragedy.
right.
Yeah.
And it almost as if Flash, for not having an inciting incident, you have to give him
Eventually,
one
right? Yeah.
to eventually, because I'm saying like Green Lantern kind of had an inciting incident because of Abin Sur
Right.
died.
Right.
But it was like you needed that
And his
inside.
his father died.
yeah.
Yeah,
Although
see?
that was a much later edition as well.
But that's
by
a
That
Geoff
was a
Johns.
Geoff,
later
that was a
edition
Geoff
too.
Johns.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, see,
Oh,
it's,
I
it's,
didn't
wasn't
know
original.
that.
it's right around
Oh.
that same
Yeah.
time. You know
Geoff
what I
Johns,
mean?
who is
Same
an
fucking
excellent
writer.
narrative crafter, was
Yeah.
like, these characters need more of this.
I would argue, probably for a different podcast, I would argue though that for Mark Grayson, his
I'm talking about
father,
Invincible.
yeah,
now.
his father's betrayal defines him more as a hero than him just inheriting powers.
and the betrayal was
wanting
in
to
the
do
works,
something with
right?
them.
Even if we, the readers,
Yeah.
didn't know
The
about
betrayal,
it, like it was always the
in
case.
the first issue,
Yeah.
you see mysteriously the Guardians of the
see.
Globe
Okay.
get murked.
Yeah,
right?
just like in the first episode of the series.
yeah,
I'll
or
give
second
you-
issue, something like that.
I'll give you that, but while the betrayal makes him maybe like lean in harder to
Yeah.
be a hero and like double down, like I'm going to be the best
He
damn
just wants
Invincible
to do
ever.
his dad's job
But
at the beginning.
but it did not, imbue him with any extra bravery to put on the mask and want to be.
No. It just made him a different
I think
version
it
of
made
himself.
him take it more seriously.
That's kind of what I'm saying.
Story-wise,
Like
from
that-
our perspective,
like
that
that-
was part of it from the beginning.
Right, I feel you.
Yeah.
I feel you.
But I'm like, is there a modern 21st century hero that is just pure earnestness and
I
altruistic?
mean, write in, viewers, and let us
That
know.
I'm-
Yeah.
Now,
like,
to
not
answer your
remembering.
Can I say
question from the other side.
Wonder Woman.
I was just
She
thinking
doesn't
Wonder
have
Woman.
a.
She's
She doesn't have.
Oh, God.
She doesn't have a tragedy.
She is a complete
She's
outsider.
exiled from
Yeah.
her. So in her original story,
Oh, she was exiled.
she was at least pissed Hippolyta off
Mhm.
because she wasn't supposed to be competing in that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how Hippolyta felt about it afterwards.
Multiple origins. Either
Yeah.
she is a bastard child of Zeus.
Right.
I mean, who isn't,
takes-
though?
Right.
Or
Zeus
that's a
got
good point.
around.
or
Yeah.
she is the manufactured product of Hippolyta's want for a child and is
Yeah.
always
There's-
considered an
yes,
other and
There's also the
exiled for it.
general Amazon, like these are a society of people who their greatest champion is Wonder Woman, who are there because they were wronged a great deal in the past. Like
Yeah.
that's the whole thing with Themyscira.
That's true. But to JD's point, the original origin
Mhm.
of Wonder Woman was not tragedy, unless you think that she's going to go and fight for justice and
It's not like she lost her mom or
Yeah,
anybody
right.
else
Yeah.
killed.
You know, but the more I talk about it, though, I think the story of who the Amazons are is maybe a bit of a stretch, but they're like she's the product of this society that still personally remembers this hardship.
I'm not trying to make the point, but I realize I'm trying to get there, is that I do think for a lot of these morality plays and superheroes and heroics and super ego and ego stories to be told, they do have to have grounded tragedy kind of layered in them to endure as much, because your hero usually needs adversity, and if they are superpowered, that almost always exclusively comes in the form of personal
Like
tragedy
emotional.
or emotional tragedy, right?
I actually just
Yeah.
thought of one. This is from a little longer than 30 years ago, but to fully answer the other part of your question, like, do I like it or not? I think it's cool that Barry Allen it's unique. It's interesting that he was just like, I think it would be good to be a superhero. I'm going to do, and I'm going to do that. That would be fun and a good thing to do for everyone. And it's very unique and it's interesting and it's fun. And I like light stuff.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
no,
cool.
yeah, so do I.
Yeah.
But I also it's an interesting conversation also, because would it endure modern times
It's
if there
interesting.
wasn't some sort of personal tragedy
I don't know.
that
And maybe that's
propels
what
the
allowed
character?
him to come back
Like
and stay around.
Post Joseph Campbell, is that even possible?
I don't know.
You know what I'm saying?
Star Trek was the example that I just thought of. Those characters generally, pre-2000s anyway, they got into Starfleet because they really believe in the ideals of Starfleet and they want to go explore and they
that's
do
fair.
good things.
Right.
And we
You
still have
know?
those characters.
Yeah.
Like Tilly is a perfect example of that kind of character. Uhura. But
Burnham suffers.
modern
And she's a real setback in the beginning.
in modern versions of the story,
Pike knows what's going to happen to him.
we add personal tragedy or personal stakes in general. Yeah.
There was that
Kirk
moment
just
in
wants
the,
to
in the
get
first
some.
episode.
That's
That's
his
true.
whole motivation is like, what
His
new
tragedy
alien
is
can I
not
fuck?
getting enough.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. Anyway,
Nice.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
That
you
was
very
awesome.
That
much.
was really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the main topic for tonight is Blackest Night, written by Geoff Johns and various, art by Yvonne Reese and various, from DC Comics from 2009 to 2010. As the war between the different corps rages on, the prophecy of the Blackest Night descends upon the universe. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps lead DC's champions into battle to save the universe from an army of Black Lanterns made up of the DCU's deceased heroes and villains.
That was a problem.
Flash facts.
Was a problem.
Yeah.
Entire event, not including the lead up, consists of 76 issues across 30 different titles.
Jesus.
You're delighted.
That is a lot. I am delighted. And they say that in this
They do.
story.
Flash fact. Yeah. Hal says it, right?
Hal does say it. Yeah.
The 10th anniversary omnibus collects 55 issues of the core
Lift with
event.
your knee.
That is
legs.
Okay.
1,600
Here it is.
pages.
That's a
How
lot.
many
I'm just
pages?
gonna hold it the entire
Yeah.
time.
Please do.
I mean, you've got the
It's a test of will.
initially
guns.
teased in December 2007 as the finale to the Sinestro Corps War. Ugh.
So 2.5
That's a big
years
boy.
of lead up.
Yeah.
Before we talk about this event, I want to talk about how amazing I found this Green Lantern era.
Yeah.
The green is willpower. It was always baked into the cake that like the color of green is the color of willpower, and
You need
they're
great will.
able.
That's one of the
you need-
requirements to be
yeah.
a Green Lantern.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Was it actually the color of green, or it was you just have to have willpower? But I don't think the color
Oh no,
green
it was definitely. There's a story shortly before this where Guy Gardner goes undercover and he swallows this thing which acts as a ring, but to keep their identity secret, it's purple.
Yeah.
The energy is purple. So no, the actual colors, and green being willpower. But I think what Noel's saying is that the green energy was always related to willpower.
Yes, yeah.
willpower.
That was-
Yeah, I mean, when they first colored it,
Yeah.
like 80 years ago, they
Yeah.
were like green, cool.
Yeah.
Didn't think about it,
This one
but
looks
it's
good.
always been associated with
Yeah.
willpower.
Yeah.
Different from Superman's
To-
colors.
To take the entire rainbow and then apply a facet of the emotional spectrum and then reverse engineer entire cores of that emotional spectrum,
Including the yellow one, which already existed, giving them a cool backstory.
and which came from the fact that yellow used to be the only yellow and wood were the only
Yes.
For different Alan Scott.
Weaknesses.
weaknesses of Golden
Green
Era
Lanterns.
Green Lanterns.
Right.
Yellow. Why? Cause
Right. Wood, from
then
an
they-
era when they weren't thinking about someone trying to attack Green Lantern, it's still pretty good, even if you can't affect wood. If you have a lot of enemies, wood's a tough one to get around.
which on paper is just so stupid.
It's very stupid.
Like, what? Oh, the color yellow.
But Geoff
I'm
Johns
weak in the
even...
knees.
What's it to
Well,
make-
like
Like
this.
so
make him
stupid.
Yeah.
weak?
Yeah.
It wasn't kryptonite.
It didn't make it kryptonite.
I
It just
mean,
went through his constructs.
According to what was it? Didn't Frank Miller make fun of
All-Star
it?
Batman.
All-Star Batman.
All-Star
yeah.
Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
It's still it did
It's
make
still
it.
fun. I know, but
Widely
it was
heralded
funny.
as
it was
a
funny,
Batman
though.
story.
It was very funny. But the fact that like this, I think it was like the first time I ever felt like the writer was just as nerdy about these details as I wanted to be, and took pieces of established story points and made something new.
Yep.
Like elevated the medium by being a fan of it as opposed to just a jobber that
Yeah.
goes in like quick.
Well, I think, as we have talked about many times, we being everyone, JD very much especially, about how great Geoff Johns is at that. Using really deep lore sometimes, but also sometimes stuff that's very well known, but writing a story, putting those into new perspectives, doing retcons that seemed like they were supposed to be that way in the beginning. It's something that I really loved about Universe X, which you guys don't care for that much, but Geoff Johns is the master.
Yeah.
Other people are very good, but Geoff Johns does it like so well and has done it so many times. The white hair that Hal Jordan had, right? He worked that in, that the parallax entity, yellow, was imprisoned within the Green Lantern power battery. So what had been previously called a necessary impurity to make sure that Green Lanterns weren't too powerful by the Guardians was revealed to be, because of this light in this light-powered weapon, it couldn't affect it. The entity goes into Hal, explains why he turned crazy a long time ago, which I never cared much for.
Yeah.
And
I loved it, but yeah.
even he loved it. And I came to love Kyle Rayner a great deal after that. But even explained why they started drawing him with white at the temples, because he was getting shocked with fear all the time.
Yeah.
This we were talking about it a little bit before we were recording. I don't know if you were a fan of Green Lantern at the time or just comics in general.
No.
Because you jumped in and out. I also jumped in and out, but Green Lantern Rebirth, my college roommate's boyfriend gave me the trade paperback of Rebirth. And that explicitly got me back into comics.
That's awesome.
I did not.
Is that right? Oh,
yeah,
cool.
Like it was that trade paperback, which I might still have, that he was just like, just read this.
Nice.
I didn't understand who the fuck the Spectre was. I had no idea who Black Hand was.
Why Hal Jordan was the Spectre at the time?
I did not know.
Right.
I did not know the rules. I did not know Green Arrow was dead.
You're talking about Blackest Night.
No, I'm talking about
Rebirth.
Oh, Rebirth.
Yeah.
That got me back in general. And then this was the series that I just kind of followed. It was the stupid crumb trail through the forest of like, well, now I'm reading comics full time again.
Yeah.
But yeah, this and the fact that you could trace that book to this almost 10 years later, is just wild. Like,
yeah, with a lot of cool stuff in between.
What other medium, what other creative medium for profit allows that much lead time, leeway, creative freedom to just like call your shot,
right?
Because comics can't do it anymore. Movies can't do it anymore. Like you see people like announce a whole series of sequels and like the first one fails, they don't do like
the
who
MCU
gets to do that anymore, right?
Did it, and
by
I
accident.
would like to do it again, and we'll see. But yeah,
I think it's like a flash in the pan. Like it's not something you can recreate. Anyway, sorry.
There's so many flashes.
So
so many flashes.
So many flashes.
I was delighted to have to revisit this. I'm so glad you picked this. This is maintains the top spot of like all of the DC events because of the lead up and the amount of time that Geoff Johns put into it. And reading Green Lantern Rebirth, I couldn't believe what I was reading because it felt so obvious.
Yeah,
I was annoyed. Like, how did no one think of this?
Yeah.
How are we just now getting to a whole color spectrum?
Yeah.
It's so obvious. I can't believe they didn't do it. And so, yeah, having to revisit this, I actually started off with the trade paperback. And then because I was enjoying it so much, I cracked open my omnibus. And it is a glorious thing to behold.
And then what happened, JD?
And then I didn't quite, I haven't finished it yet.
Is that right?
Yeah. I haven't
but
finished
you read
it.
some stuff that none of us have read.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
this week.
Yeah.
I mean, I read all of it.
I've read it all. I actually still have my single issues.
Oh, sweet.
I went through all my stuff recently, and almost the whole half of a long box of just Blackest Night banners at the top. I'm like, shit, I don't know if I can get rid of these yet.
Did you organize them? Even though there were a bunch of different titles, was it all just Blackest Night in order?
Yeah, I think naturally they're just in order because when I was picking them up, I was picking them up in publishing
order.
to
organize one's comics in release order.
Well, that's how this is
That
mapped.
would be cool.
This omnibus is not.
That's cool.
That's why JD had trouble finishing it, because it's not like Blackest Night 0 through 8 and then other series.
Okay.
You're literally going to read like 0 issue and 1 and 2 and then 4 issues of the tie-in and 3 of this. Like
whatever happened with the Roy G. Bivolo group.
That was actually my favorite. You know what? Let's get everyone else's opinion because I have an absolute favorite piece of this book that I thought was hilarious.
When?
Well, yeah.
Don't go to Alice.
Yeah, I'm curious about, because Alice, what's your background here?
Okay,
with this stuff.
So I do enjoy comics, and I think it's really fun because it's funny being on this podcast. Because in my other social circles, I am the comic book friend.
I got you.
And then I come here and I'm like, I know nothing.
There's so much stuff around.
I know nothing.
Our problem is not your deficit.
No, but I want to be like that. And so part of the reason why I
have a picture of my 3-year-old son as my bookmark.
Oh, that's so cute.
He's also in my back.
Anyway, sorry.
So I've always enjoyed like superhero media. Like I used to watch Adam West Batman as a kid.
Cool.
I would dress in my Batman and Robin PJs all the time.
Cool.
I
They were
love
Batman
Wonder
and
Woman.
Robin PJs, like
So I love all that stuff, but I never really got into comics until I was in like my 20s. And even then, I didn't have a local comic book shop to go to, like JD's Hero Complex at 4327 Main Street, right here in Manioc, PA. Did I do it?
Perfect.
It was good.
It's okay.
Nailed it. Good. Yeah.
So
he's been trained well.
I know. Like I said, I listened to this podcast before I was on it.
She's our Robin.
You're the one.
So I just didn't really have like a way or place to start. So I would just go into like Barnes and Nobles and like, oh, this looks good. Like I grab anything Batman or Walking Dead. And so I have a very scattered knowledge of
That's where I discovered
DC.
Preacher for the first time.
Yeah.
It was in-
Is that right?
Yeah, Barnes and Noble.
Cool.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
I got my first Sandman at a Barnes & Noble. Yeah.
Nice. I got my first Sandman from.
Oh, also a fine choice.
Excellent. So very scattered all over the place, knowledge DC wise. Mostly only really read Batman. So I had like not a ton of knowledge Green Lantern wise. Yeah. And I freaking loved this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
I
cool.
loved
Very
this.
cool.
Ah,
I was a
Nice.
little lost, obviously, but like
Sure.
I could follow the story,
Yeah.
the main parts of the
Now,
story.
did you have one that had like the 2 kind of prequel issues and then the 8 issues, or did you just have the 8 issues?
Yeah, JD
Okay,
got
cool.
it.
It was
Cool.
0 through 8. I think it was
Yeah.
the free comic book day that year, and
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
then 0 issue. And
Okay, so you get a little explanation of the deal,
Yeah.
and then you're into it.
I had no idea who the Black Hand was, and like they introduced him, and he
Pretty
was like,
obscure character before
yeah,
this.
and he was like, spooky guy who works in a morgue, and I was like, oh, cool, like me. And then I was like, oh, he's awful. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, this sucks.
yeah, no, you two are not similar beyond
Yeah,
that.
that's good.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
You
good.
guys
You
just
also
do
don't have
not
a
get
cosmic
good representation.
control.
We don't get good representation as death
That's
workers.
a really good point. Yeah,
I'm gonna
Could be
make a
better
comic
stuff.
book about.
Yeah, about a hero
yeah.
death worker. Is that what you called it?
Yeah, I'm a death care worker.
Okay.
Or like
Oh.
death worker.
Yeah.
It's like
I like
the-
Death Worker. You got the name of your comic.
Death worker is
Death
the name of
Worker.
my
That's
comic.
actually
Yeah.
a really good
Death
name.
Worker Inc. It's a whole team.
All right, we're
From the
gonna do
90s.
it. Yeah. But overall, I really enjoyed this. I liked the whole spectrum of the Lantern Corps.
Oh, cool.
And yeah.
Those were, when they first introduced, very exciting.
Yeah.
It was like, see, I personally love like the Reverse Flash. I love a character that is similar to the main guy that you know with different colors.
Yes.
It's very cool, right?
Who
It's
doesn't
like
love that?
a little novelty in the familiar. It's a very solid strategy.
Mhm.
If you have it on your phone, it'd be easier for me to look at it that way.
What are you trying to
I'm
find?
trying to find a scene specifically.
Okay.
You guys keep talking.
Cool. And Len, what are your overall impressions of this event?
Did you read this? Wait, did you read it when it came out? Did you
No, he didn't read it.
ever? Did
I
you
don't
never?
think so.
Did you never read this?
Well, I've read the 0 issue.
There you go. That's where it
And-
starts.
And then because I knew I was coming on here, I said, well, let me read Blackest Night.
Sure.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
So I read issue 1.
Mm.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that was more than I
Okay.
thought.
And then
Okay.
issue 2.
Uh-huh.
And then
Yes.
I said, I don't think I'm going to make it
Mm.
through this. But here's the reason why. It's not that I wasn't enjoying it. I like Geoff Johns' writing for the
Mhm.
most part, as well. And I'm in the bag for Ivan Reis.
The art is
Oh,
beautiful.
oof.
You
His whole
cannot
straight
knock
through.
Oh,
his
the art is
Yeah, yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
It's incredible, right? But
Hmm.
as you are learning, Alice,
Yes.
I do not do well with horror.
Oh, see,
the
I
zombie
love.
parts.
No, I meant to say that too. I
That's
love
right.
the
I recommended-
horror-esque aspect
Right?
of this. I
Yes,
love me some
Scavenger
It
horror.
is a
trying to,
horror
too.
book.
Yeah.
Not thinking of that.
Yes.
And like
Oh.
emotional horror too,
Yeah.
not just
That's
gore.
true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
I didn't think of any of that.
Yes.
I didn't even know you were
right.
joining when I suggested this.
And one
We're
other
doing it.
aspect of horror that I really do not like, even more so than horror, is superhero horror.
Mm.
To look at superheroes who should be
People that you
heroic
love.
figures.
Right.
And
being-
Yeah.
You're like, this
Yeah.
isn't right.
Yeah.
I
So
don't like this.
Yeah.
So I didn't.
Well, you didn't get to it, Len. That wasn't really them. That was the Black Rings.
Yeah. See, but I
understand the imagery
yeah.
was hard for them too.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
the
yeah.
whole
Then
point.
Yeah.
Because then I told myself, well, maybe
Yeah.
let me look at the covers.
Okay.
And the first,
yeah.
so because the first cover I
It's
look
pretty
at
bad.
is a Titans cover
Mhm.
with Beast Boy kissing on a decrepit
Zombie.
Terra.
Terra.
Yeah, it's
So
true.
then I
Zombie
said,
Terra.
all right, I will read Wikipedia. So
Uh-huh.
I have
Okay.
read
Okay.
I have read Blackest Night via
You got
Wikipedia.
the story.
So-
you know that a lot of
I
people
love
come
it.
back to life at the end.
Yes.
Very uplifting.
Not
Yes, it
everyone.
says so in
Yeah, yeah.
Wikipedia. That
Yeah, it
is
gives you a
exactly what
list of who it
happens.
is.
And then
Yeah.
you felt uplifted.
Yeah, yeah.
That was how they end it.
You
And
feel
I-
uplifted now.
That's my fingerprint.
So I want to talk
Oh,
about my favorite
yes.
scene.
I made a note about that too.
The
It's
you got here?
amazing.
okay,
What is
so it's a scene.
Oh my God,
the
wait, yeah, I
Rainbow
wanna talk
Raiders.
about that.
Okay,
Oh, that's what I was. Yeah.
Yeah. This is such a dark fucking scene.
Yeah.
Dude.
It's amazing.
But it's
So
hilarious.
follow-up
They're these-
in the main story.
like the follow up is
It's in one of the
yeah,
other-
So
yeah.
like this group of like D-lister.
So
Whatever.
you know the Rainbow Raider, Flash's villain.
Roy
Yes.
G. Bivolo.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's his name.
Well, I mean,
That's why I went into Rainbow Rating.
So they got updated to be an actual team called the Rainbow Raiders, where they each represent a different color of the rainbow.
Yeah.
so they're seeing that the dead are rising and they're winning. They're like, this is our time. we're gonna be a part of the winning team.
They're also
Let's
like,
do
we
it.
suck at
So
this. We have each taken a part of one of Flash's least effectual villains.
Yeah.
We are not good at our team
So
thing.
they collectively agree we're gonna off ourselves so we can join the undead and finally be a part of the winning team. They
don't
do
win.
it, and
Hey,
then the very next scene, we're being explained. The heroes are being explained to that it's emotional tethers that resurrect the dead.
Oh, right, and nobody knows about them.
Yeah, nobody knows about them or cares about them, and they just killed themselves.
Yeah.
And the joke is that
They're
you
not
have
coming
no,
back.
you have no
Yeah.
emotional tether. You're not coming back.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I mean, I'm not even sure we'd seen
It
that
is-
group before this.
No, it wasn't.
no, we
it
hadn't.
wasn't at all in any of the books leading
That
up to
is
it or nothing.
wild.
It is a one-off scene.
It's a good
and
storytelling
it's
beat
dark
too.
and it's
Okay.
weird.
there's no,
and I
like-
love it.
See, I
There's
thought
no
it was
side
funny, and
issue?
I thought it was something I was missing.
Nope.
I was
No.
like, oh, okay.
They're brand new.
That's
it is.
hilarious.
It is incredibly
Yeah.
twisted, like
That's-
joke.
that's
that
really
I was
dark.
like,
I was
yeah,
I was
let's
reading
go.
I was reading this, and then when that happened is when I was like, I got to take notes.
Yeah.
I got to write
Yeah.
this down. This is my favorite scene so far. Yeah, I love
It was.
that.
I
Such a
had
funny,
forgotten
darkly
about that,
funny bit.
and it just reaffirmed like how just even the corners of this thing are fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, when I was reading this, I was
It was funny.
trying to get through it not as quickly as possible, but I knew that we were discussing it on the show and that I had a limited window. And I'm like, all right, I got, plenty of time. I got this much time. I found the last several issues, I was just breezing through. I looked down and I was like 8 minutes or whatever, it was 8 minutes, but they were so fun. The last several, they're very fast paced and just easy to read. When we got to issue 8, I'm like, oh, we're already issue 8? It's
Yeah,
already
I
happened?
was
It's
reading it on
cool.
my lunch break at work, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm already like
Yeah.
halfway done. Like I started on Monday. I'm like, oh, I'm like flying through this. This is great. Like, yeah.
They also do have, we stated it earlier, the Flash Fact.
Mhm.
It's a very cool thing from older comics especially, very big on science, and especially the Flash. And sometimes he would just, outside of the stories, there would be in the background Flash Fact, final page, and they would give you some fact, usually relating to something moving fast or something like that. And it's become a thing. I remember Wally West was talking about, he was like getting rid of a bomb, and he said, Flash Fact, escape velocity is 7 miles per second. And I know that because of the Flash, right? My stepdad learned the word laser because of the Flash.
I learned the word doppelganger.
From
Oh,
a
that's
Marvel
fun.
comic when they were all had the doppelgangers?
Yes,
I remember
yeah,
those.
and I even
Yeah,
asked
yeah.
my mom because I wasn't sure, is that a made up Marvel word? And I was like, Mom, what is doppelganger a real word? And she's like, I don't know what that is. She never heard of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I was
Wow.
like, oh, I guess it's made up. And then I later
He just
found
didn't
out.
want you to know.
Yeah. That she was a doppelganger.
I was just gonna say, was she a doppelganger?
I remember reading an issue of Thor. No, it wasn't Thor. It was Avengers, but Thor was in it.
Yeah.
And he says, like, you can't go sans something, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he learned
sans.
sans.
And I was like, what's a sans?
Cool.
And I went to my mom to ask her, like, what does sans mean? I was on punishment at the time. Because this is why I wasn't watching TV. So I just read my comics. I'm like, Mom, what's the sans mean? Ask me when you're off punishment.
What?
Oh, I thought it was gonna.
You
I
want to
told her-
learn something? Ask me when you're not punished, and I'll teach you
Yeah.
stuff.
You would obviously like knowing this, so it's for later. But you did learn from
I had
that.
it coming.
Yeah. All right. And now you're a great guy. You learned
I
your
went
lesson.
to
You were a
bed-
great kid then.
I
I'm
went
sure.
to bed sans answer.
Ah. But
Nice.
is
Sans
this then
knowledge.
why did you ask later? You were like,
I figured it
You
out from
figured it out.
context.
Yeah.
see, even cooler. There's a number of words
That reading
I pronounced.
comprehension is coming
Yeah,
back
Len's
around.
got it
Get my
too.
snaps.
3 out of 5.
It gets tiring after a while.
does.
Yeah, well, that's why we don't do it all the time. So, and they used it here too. Flash fact. I love
That's
that.
showing off.
Yeah.
Oh,
All
shit.
right, all
the
right,
double
all right,
with the
all right.
thing. That's pretty
Friggin'
cool.
Olympics.
Yeah, there's a number of words that I pronounced differently than the dictionary suggests for a lot of years because I read them first.
Uh-huh.
Right. And,
Fruition.
Like,
there you go.
My
yeah.
plan has come to fruition.
I'm pretty sure there's a Magneto or a Magneto.
Yeah.
There
This
is.
guy's a-
Now
What
that
is
one is a
the-
little different because there's no other instances of that word.
Yeah, that's a made up
Outside
word.
of
That
that.
one I get.
But citadel, I pronounced it for many years. Citadel is
Oh,
how
citadel.
some people will
Citadel?
say it.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I don't throw citadel in there every now and again,
Mhm.
but that's the only one I can think of. But
I'm sure there are
I
some.
think there
I
were
just
other
don't.
ones.
I can't think of any right now.
I used to say Island
I could see
instead of
that.
Well,
Sure.
no, I grew up on Long Island,
Hmm.
so I should have known.
But did you know that it was spelled that way?
I know, apparently not.
Yeah.
Was this like a
Quit telling
rebellious
on
thing?
yourself. It's fine. Just quit telling on yourself.
Yeah.
It's always been an island. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
I
Is
walk
that
down
even an
aisles.
island though? That's not
Yeah.
really an island, is it?
It's connected by a bridge. So, yeah, it's
So it is an island.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. It's not an
Yeah,
isthmus.
yeah.
It's not a peninsula.
It's an
It's
island.
not a cape
Yeah.
or a
Island.
horn.
It's an island for sure. It's a long one.
All right. That's good.
Yeah.
The Blackest Night.
It's the Blackest Night.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, did you continue reading the book after this?
Oh, I'm sorry, not this week. I will say, I assume what you're going to say is
Kinda
that
peaks here.
It peaks here, and then it sort of piddles out.
It's
I
still
liked
good.
Brightest Day. I thought
I
Brightest Day
enjoyed
was
Brightest
good.
Day.
You mean
but it
Green
was still-
Lantern itself?
yeah, this
Okay.
is
Oh, okay.
the
They
Geoff
do a
Johns
third-
Green Lantern.
They do like a
kind
third.
of comics.
Well, yeah. Yeah, you can make the case. But yeah, there was a time early on in Green Lantern, I'm like, Geoff Johns to do this as long as he wants. And I hope he does this forever. Right. And, you know, I was a younger person back then. And now I see that probably isn't a good idea,
Yeah.
you know, most times. But
Was it the War of the Green Lantern?
there was the whole thing with the Guardians.
There was the War of
The
the
first
Green
Guardian?
Lanterns, the first Guardian.
It was another
Uh,
event series that once again dealt with a large and overwhelming force of faceless, similar
It's
things.
the hand, the origin of creation, and
Oh,
like the first lantern and the.
Who was Kronos?
Kronos.
Yeah.
So when
Kronos, yeah.
looked at it.
Right.
It turned out to be, in a story by Larry Niven, it turned out to be an illusion the Guardians had created so that no one would go back in time and try to attack them
There you
because it
go.
looked like they created the universe.
Is this like Kronos, like Greek mythology Kronos, or is it
He's
just somebody with the
named
same name? Oh,
similarly,
okay.
but
I wasn't
no.
sure if we were
He's a
getting more mythology in
guardian
here.
who broke their edict of,
Gotcha.
and he
Gotcha.
brought evil into the universe, I think.
Yeah,
and
he was the big bad of that.
Yeah, it was no
event
good.
later
It was
on.
no good.
He
Yeah.
stayed on this book for another 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, everything
Through
became
New
about the
52.
different color lantern.
Yeah.
Yeah,
colors.
Yeah.
Even we were like,
Yeah.
as amazing as the
Yeah.
color spectrum rings was to me, I eventually was like, can we just stop?
Well,
Can
there
we
was
stop
there
with
was
it?
a Red Lanterns book too at the same
There
time.
was,
Yeah.
and Guy was a Red Lantern for a while. And it was pretty
I was
good.
interested in the Red Lantern.
They're
They're
cool.
With their
They're very
connection
cool.
with the ring.
Yeah.
and-
Once
yeah.
again,
Is the
based
cat
off
in this?
of
We'll get you. Oh, Dax.
Dax,
Dax the space cat.
yes,
No.
who's
who
cool.
vomits blood.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
Atrocitus is another. He was in a single issue story about why Abin Sur, the Green Lantern
Yeah.
that died when Hal Jordan got his ring, why he was in a spaceship, right?
As opposed to
As opposed
just
to
flying
flying.
around
Yeah.
with his ring.
I
Because
wondered that too.
when it first came out, a Green Lantern being in a spaceship, it was like, yeah, they got this ring, but
The-
they also need a spaceship, right? So Geoff Johns retconned it to there was some fear that he had. He had written a story written by Alan Moore
Okay.
in that he had visited this planet, Yasmalt, and met these horrors, and they put this idea into his mind that his ring would fail or something like that. So that's why he was on the ship. Which was itself a retcon by Alan Moore.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And then Atrocitus is one of them. I don't
you
know
were
if he was
referring
in that.
to probably the most accessible arc of the main Green Lantern book. It's called Secret Origin. It is
okay.
6
Oh, yeah.
issues
Okay.
that is back in time, and it's
Yeah.
in this book
I
they
have
mention
that for some reason.
in this book they even
I don't remember
mention
when I got it.
Atrocitus recognizes Black Hand
Mhm.
because in that story,
Right.
they're trying to capture Atrocitus
Mm-hmm.
partners. Sinestro and Hal
Right.
and a green Hal, a young Hal,
Yeah.
and
Green
they
Hal.
and they
I
screw
see.
up, and William Hand is hanging out in the cemetery.
Right,
he almost gets
right.
killed. And
Like all
like-
people who work in death do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
His-
yeah.
well,
Hang out
I
in
do love
cemeteries.
hanging out in
His
cemeteries.
He's
dad-
also
I do
not
do
a
that.
great
his dad
guy.
owns
I
a. But yeah, like that was all of that was established in
And
there.
I think
like,
that was in the main Green
It was-
Lantern
it was the main book,
which was
yeah.
drawn by the now late. He did Avengers Forever.
Carlos Pacheco.
Pacheco.
Oh, yeah.
Pacheco.
Carlos Pacheco.
I remember
Such a
the-
good-looking
I
book.
remember
Yeah.
the covers being so wonderful that I
They
had
were
them on my
really good.
phone back.
And
in
I
these
think
for a
that's when we
while.
first find out that his dad died in with
Yes.
the,
No,
in the plane.
We found that in Rebirth.
Oh, was that in Reboot? But it was Geoff Johns' run.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It's
okay.
like after Sinestro Corps War, there were a couple of like
Mm.
background
Mm-hmm.
arcs, and Secret Origin was like right afterwards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this book is phenomenal, and it ends in such a great way. There were a number of characters that, looking back, I don't know if some of those characters were killed, because they were fairly recently killed, some of them, in order to be part of this story and
Exactly.
come back, right? Like, was this
Maybe.
always the plan with Geoff Johns? Although I did love how when Martian Manhunter died, at his funeral, Superman mentioned, like, we pray for a resurrection. because this happens with them, right? And it's a big part of this story.
And they bring it up a few times that it's like part of the job.
They
like,
do.
Yeah.
And for those particular characters to come back, I was very, Martian Manhunter, Firestorm.
Yeah.
I was very excited about these characters.
There's a couple little favorite bits that I have. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, this is the first time I've read comics that comment on comics.
About how there's always a death and the resurrection.
Yeah.
A large
thing.
part of the the conflict is that you've been allowed to be resurrected for my purposes here.
Yeah.
Like, it takes your knowledge of the medium and uses it against you as a facet of the story.
Love
I
that.
love
Which Geoff
that.
Johns has been doing for a while, and he continued to do in Doomsday Clock, which everyone needs to revisit.
It's
And
amazing.
He did
Amazing
an
story.
Infinite Crisis.
Yeah,
Yes.
he did
Which
it
was the whole
Absolutely.
thing was a commentary on modern comics versus the comics of the 80s
which
or the 70s.
he
Or the
just kind of
60s.
repeated in Doomsday Clock. But yeah,
Um,
I
like that
love
idea
it.
of taking what you are familiar with as a construct of the story is just fucking
And here's
rad.
why it was.
Just rad.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things that bugs me is that, remember, the big deal was, oh, now we have a reason for all of these characters to have died and come back. That's going to mean something again, you guys.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, you were old enough to know.
It did
better.
for a little while, but just that was never going to stick forever.
you knew it
Yeah,
was gonna stick.
because the real reason wasn't Necron. It was their impulse to bring characters
Yeah.
back.
I know, but I was naive enough to be like, oh, good, they're
Oh.
finally going to stop bringing characters
Yeah.
back, and like
It
it'll
would-
mean
maybe
something
they
when the
did for a
character
little bit.
dies.
It would just be it's like a first cycle they did. But,
Yeah.
It was like holding the line at $2.99.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Ugh.
a New 52 happened a year and a half later, 2 years later.
That was around the
And
time
that
when I
was it.
started
Was it
getting
really?
into comics. Yeah.
Was that?
that close?
Well, this was 2009. That was 2011.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. How about right? Because Green Lantern was incredibly successful during this time because of Geoff Johns' run and this and everything. And then that made that and Batman be the two that they didn't really reboot.
Hated that.
They did.
Yeah.
I was okay with it
Yeah.
because those were the only two books that I was enjoying.
Like,
at the
I
time.
was
but
in-
it still made no sense.
I was into seeing those
None of it
stories,
made
but I really
sense.
wanted to see a new beginning for Hal Jordan and
Yeah.
Batman.
arguably,
Yeah.
arguably, the Batman book was fine. It was just their insistence on including all of the things that Batman did before as part
Right.
of continuity.
He
Well,
had
and
a Robin
Sinestro
per
was-
year.
You
Yeah.
just read Snyder's Batman.
Speaking of resurrections,
Fine.
Oh
Batman-
yeah, Zack Snyder's Batman was amazing.
Shut your face.
Zack
Scott Snyder's
Scott
Batman.
Snyder's
Yeah.
Batman.
That book could have been New 52 with no issues whatsoever.
Yeah,
It wasn't beholden to
Well, 'cause
anything
that
that
was-
happened to him a month ago. Whereas
Yeah.
with Green Lantern, it was
Issue
the
the
cliffhanger
next issue.
of
Right.
that was that
Sinestro was
Sinestro
on
became the Green
issue
Lantern,
number one of
and he
the
was
new
number
52.
one. Yeah.
He was the Green Lantern. Yeah, through a lot
It
of.
was a direct continuation, and that was actually my favorite. I think it was the iFanboy guys that would always make fun of Hal Jordan at the time because he didn't have a ring, and then it was like his whole subplot was that he has no idea how to function as a person.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how do I get a job?
Yeah.
How do I pay rent? Carol, can I have a loan?
Yeah.
Like, that was
Yeah.
literally his
Which
journey.
was kind of a strong element of, he was, a lot of characters have like, this is what they do, Hal Jordan was like,
Shitty
sometimes I'm a
test
toy
pilot.
salesman. Sometimes I do this. A lot of times I'm away from the planet for a long time. Very difficult to have a job.
Yeah, his job history
Yeah.
is probably absolute garbage.
Remember, there was a time when he was just walking the earth.
He was.
Was he
with
walking around?
Yeah.
with
Yeah, he was
with,
walking the
Superman.
earth.
with Ollie, right?
Oh, Hard Traveling Heroes?
No,
you
no,
mean?
I'm talking
Or-
about the ones that were drawn by Pat Broderick. And it was him and Guy Gardner.
Oh, the
actually
road
had-
back?
The road back.
That was amazing.
That was awesome.
I had,
wow.
that
I
was
wasn't
one of
even
my
talking about that. I was talking
Yeah,
about. I was talking about
the
earlier.
The
Yeah.
first graphic novels I ever had. I've read it so many times, and it was a very early introduction to Green Lantern, if not the first. Probably not. There was also a miscoloring in the graphic novel that I had, where you see them as red instead of green.
Oh.
Like I said before, when you see them as a different color, it's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like know exactly what you're talking about. Same thing happens to me. I'm like, ooh, slightly different color
yeah, it's
costume. I'm
fun.
into it. Yeah.
That's cool.
I'm like,
that
ooh,
tickles a
all
bit
right.
of novelty.
Yeah.
But with the familiar,
Yeah.
very cool. But the road back was like very defining Green Lantern for me.
That was
When
my
he-
first Green Lantern and Emerald Twilight? Emerald
Yeah.
Dawn.
Emerald Dawn.
Emerald Dawn.
With the back in the past, him and Sinestro.
Yeah.
That was cool too.
Yeah.
Very
and
cool.
then Emerald Dawn 2, where he was a drunk driver and went to jail.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's a shame I don't revisit those anymore because they were written by, now we know, a pedophile.
Oh.
Who wrote
Baron?
them?
What was that?
No, it's not
No.
Mike Barron.
No,
Gerard.
he's a
Gerard something.
Nazi.
Gerard Jones?
Gerard Jones.
Gerard
Jerry Jones. Yeah.
So yeah. But it was drawn by
Yeah,
MD
Mark
Bright,
Barron's
who is
just a racist.
There you go.
Yeah.
Other people were
Wait,
trying.
what's this?
Oh, sorry.
The fight
That was
between him and Guy?
actually a later issue that has always returned to me, and I think I've taken influence from it. Where later on, Hal has given up his ring for some reason, like years later in comics. And Guy and he are going to... No, he didn't give up his ring. He was an Earth's Green Lantern.
Yeah.
And he and Guy are going to fight to see who will be Earth's Green Lantern and who will go out into space. And they're having a ring battle and they're like destroying things. And for whatever reason, probably that reason, they're like, we're not going to have a ring battle anymore. So they have a fist fight.
I love that. Yeah.
And it wasn't one of those like, oh, the rings ran out. We have to, you know. And Guy is wailing on him. And he's like, what I'm going to do is just take it. And I'll put my arms up and just retreat through my will. He's agreeing that, you know, retreat into myself. And just as long as he's got, this will not affect me. Yeah. And then I'll just beat him after that. You know, like he will have spent all of his energy and I am in a place within my mind that is unaffected by outside stimuli. You know, like I can just do this. And, you know, that always that influenced my outlook on life in a way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But then the rings were stolen by 2 truckers.
In the road back, yes. And they're like, we have to go handle this. And they do. Yeah. In this one, he does win and this is when he goes back to being Earth's Green Lantern. I don't think it was the lead up to this. It was way afterwards. To the road back. Yeah. Gotcha. And Guy later on became pretty cool.
Yeah, with Geoff Johns.
Did not like him. Yes.
I liked him as like the Bostonian family of police officers and
not
stuff.
Johns. Peter Tomasi.
Oh, you're
was
right.
it?
It was
okay.
Peter Tomasi wrote Green Lantern Corps.
Yes.
The companion book, which was very focused on.
That was what I talked about earlier, where he does that undercover mission, and it was the Green Lantern Corpse was the name of it.
Yeah, I have all those omnis.
It was really good, and I believe that was Peter J. Tomasi as well. Good.
You should read Rebirth and start reading Green Lantern because it's a wonderful book.
And when Sinestro Corps War is like the lead up to this, it's amazing, and then it's just him and Sinestro, who always had a yellow ring, and then they explain that it's like where Green Lantern is will, there's his fear, and so he starts his own corps.
Wait, I loved when Scarecrow came into it, and they gave him the yellow ring for fear, and because there's no Batman, he's like, I just want to feel fear, and they're like, oh, here, have this ring.
The cynical in me was like, oh, cool, new action figures, but then I was also like, cool new action.
Well, so I don't know. I don't remember when it happened. It wasn't in this, obviously, because Batman was dead. Was it the Sinestro Corps War where Batman gets a yellow ring?
Yeah. What?
And he's
man.
he rejects it.
He rejects it.
He's like the ability to instill great fear.
Ring.
But he has like a
yellow
Sinestro
Batman
kit
outfit
for like one scene.
It's cool.
It's pretty dope.
Of course.
Oh, I want that.
And that's an action figure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, there definitely is.
That was.
Yeah,
I remember picking up.
I was half expecting that in this.
I remember picking up that one shot, the Sinestro Corps
War
special. Sinestro Corps War special #1. And it ends with like that big cliffhanger of like, oh, the Anti-Monitor is a Sinestro Corps member. Cool.
Yeah, Superboy Prime and a lot of heavy hitters in that Sinestro Corps. Yeah.
So fucking good.
Yeah.
So when are we reading Infinite Crisis and then Sinestro?
Right? Yeah. I actually have I have 2 of the Geoff Johns Green Lantern omnibuses as well, which the second one of which have the 8 issues from this book in there. What?
Yeah.
I said, sadly, not pluralized omnibuy. It's always fun to have a weird pluralization. I know.
Yeah, I have all.
It's the novel and the familiar.
Is there 3 of them?
5 omnibuses.
Oh, is there 5 Green Lanterns?
So there's his 3 book run, this one, and then Green Lantern Corps Volume 1 by Tomasi
and Gleason.
I have those.
Yeah, man, dope.
I gotta read through them.
Do we all, except for Len, recommend The Blackest Night if you get your hands on the trade paperback? I think there's
recommend it.
Oh, hell yeah.
There is a
DC
trade.
Essentials trades now where you can just buy not this for $150. You can get like the regular trade paperback, which has issues 0 through 8. Yeah.
Yeah,
highly
there's
recommend.
2 0-ish. There's 0 and prologue or something, and then you get 1 through 8
The
of those
prologue
stories.
was a free comic book day that
Was
year.
that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Highly recommend.
Yes, highly recommend. People who read it back at that time and were lifelong or sometime Green Lantern fans and someone who had never read any of it before, we all recommend the whole spectrum.
Yes.
You enjoyed you even enjoyed the Wikipedia.
I was just going to say.
I did.
You recommend the Wikipedia.
Len read the Wikipedia and won't stand in anyone's way to buy it. Is that true?
No, I will not.
He will not. Okay, great.
Purchase it.
And I think
All right,
we've
so there you have
established
it.
we all have very good reading comprehension, so we're good
We
for
established at least 3
recommending.
of us,
Oh,
too.
that's true.
Yeah.
4 numbers and words.
That's true too. Yeah, you did. You did. And I claimed to have read
Doing this forever
something,
now. Yeah.
the word, and pronounced it differently. So not really proof.
And
Brian,
we're gonna make fun of you.
thank you so much for joining us on this road. It has been an absolute honor to have you on the show
Thank you.
week in and week out. You've been the most
Consistent.
I have.
co-host, so thank you.
Just you and I shows
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, it's true.
All of
Aw.
it's been great.
So yeah, love you. I'm so glad that you're off to go do something really awesome.
Well, thank you
It's
very
not-
much.
this
I
is
love
not a
all you
goodbye
guys, too.
forever.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. I may drop in from time to time, viewers and all of you, in case you weren't aware.
That is a threat. That is an
I-
absolute threat.
You know, if I'm ever around to do it live, that would be great. As we talked about, we did Zoom for a while, and the flow of it is not great. But if there's something really big,
Technology is a thing. It's
yeah,
fine.
exactly.
We'll figure it out.
So we'll, definitely, I plan to be part of the show again.
Nice.
And I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah.
Nice.
And Len, thank you for stopping in to say goodbye to Brian. We appreciate
Well,
it.
I had to come here because as much as I enjoy all of you,
Don't lie.
and delighted to meet you.
I was just gonna say I just met you. It's wonderful.
I'm delighted to
He's
meet
been
you.
enjoying it this whole time.
But it has been my pleasure to get to know Brian through the show and then outside of the show. For those who don't know, behind the curtains, when I was on the show, Brian would give me a lift to my
Yes.
bus stop on the way home, and the conversations
Yes.
we had.
Very
We had
fun.
a show unto ourselves
Yeah.
for many
We
nights.
did. We did. I tried to record those. I know you weren't aware of that, but
And we're
so
gonna
if I
listen
could
to
get
them
your
now.
sign
I
off
mean,
on that,
like-
that would
I
be
listen
great.
to them every
Yeah.
night.
And also, Len hosts another podcast called The Michaud Mission, and he puts on these very cool screenings
That's true.
that Tamara, my wife, and I have been
My wife.
privileged,
Yes.
and it's our pleasure to attend. They're very cool movies that we had never seen before, and so check out Len's other podcast too. And thank you for saying that, Len. It's really been my pleasure as well.
It has indeed been a pleasure. I will miss you, but I will wish you and T much success, man.
Thank you.
You just keep following
And
that
she
star.
always says, whenever you come up, I like Len. Yeah. And we're always on a half step. Len will say, tell Tamara I said hi. And I said, well, I'll tell her, but you're not going to find out about it till next week. And then she would pretty much always say hi back.
Oh, mostly.
Yeah, yeah,
Usually.
yeah. Sometimes I would forget to bring it up, but it was
I-
always understood.
I remember meeting you at JD's first shop,
Yes.
the little one.
Oh,
Baby
yeah.
store.
And
Yeah.
we were the only two that were still smokers at the time.
Yeah.
And we would just like drink and talk in front of the store and just smoke
Yeah.
about absolutely fucking nothing and everything. So
Yes.
like you're a real one, dude.
Thank you
Aw.
very much. I'm feeling the same. And we went to hang out. The three of us went to eat at a local restaurant at the time called La Taquiera Feliz, I
Yeah.
believe.
Takira
And
Feliz. Yeah.
JD was like, "Oh, it's so fun when two friends meet
Become
each
friends,
other
yeah.
and become friends." And I'm really glad that
Yeah,
happened.
it was awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. We just recently celebrated your wedding.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
that
Thank
was
you
a
all for
great time.
attending.
That was a great
And,
time.
Oh, thank you so much. I've got high res photos for you guys. and-
Nice.
yeah. Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thankfully we have Alice here to replace you.
Yes,
No,
that is thankful.
never.
Yeah.
I was gonna say something. So I actually listened to this podcast for a very long time. So I'm very familiar with your voice, and Len also your voice. So it's
Oh,
very
wow.
interesting to meet you guys like in person. But I have
Like starstruck would be how you
yeah,
described
a little
it.
bit, a little bit. Yeah, honestly.
It's like I'm so sweaty.
I know. I'm like, yeah. I weaseled my way onto this podcast.
Yeah.
I'm such a big fan. But yeah, it was really great. You welcomed me onto the show,
thank
and
you.
yeah, it's been really great getting to know you, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna continue to get to know you.
It has been really great. I would say, like, from episode 1, you're such a wonderful, fun, and funny presence.
Yeah.
And, I'm glad that you're part of the show. And it's been really fun, if brief, but really fun.
Mhm.
And great getting to know you as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. And we're friends on Facebook.
Yep.
We're in the chat still.
Yeah.
So,
Oh no, you're getting kicked out of it.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
did demand it
Hold on.
earlier. You're right. That's
yeah,
true.
can you just get rid of him now?
Go
Yeah.
on.
Thank you. Oh, I felt myself a little.
Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us. This very special Brian-centric episode.
Thank you.
Hopefully you enjoyed the Star Treks we discussed last week.
Yeah, write in about those heroes if you
yeah.
can think of heroes
yeah, who
that
does- who's
don't
it-
start with tragedy, especially if it's in the 21st century.
Any medium.
yeah, any
Yeah.
medium.
Just
I'm
give
curious.
me
Media.
a hero without tragedy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they exist.
Email us at cultpopgo@gmail.com or tweet at us at cultpopgo. Thanks so much, and we will talk at you later. Mwah.
Dun, dun, dun.